There are two major reasons that this is diabetes is an accelerated aging. There are two major reasons. One is glycosylation, and what it means is the high sugar begins to unnaturally combine with proteins in the system, therefore disorganizing enzyme systems, disorganizing the insulin receptor cells, the receptor in the membranes of the cells, disorganizing the cell membranes, disorganizing your DNA. Okay, this is how you get accelerated aging. Disorganizing the intima of the lining of your blood cells, of your blood vessels. And all that then accelerates the aging process. The other thing is the buildup of certain chemicals, xylitol in the cells, and that leads to cataracts and neuropathy, degeneration of the nerves and so forth. So these are all, without getting into the details, this is the biochemistry. There's a real biochemistry to what's going on. So anyway, good for Roger Bannister, good for us. Okay, can we just shift this just a little bit this way? Okay, so what are the main causes of diabetes? The number one cause, high sugar. It's called the 20-year rule. 20 years after white sugar is introduced into a culture, there's an outbreak of diabetes. 20 years. Trying to figure out how you can see. And it happens in every single culture. Doesn't matter where. Around the world. The second, and fructose is a leader. You see, why would I mention fructose is an issue of fruit. Can I have fruit? Well, maybe once you're healed and stable for 3 months, you can have low glycemic fruit. But fructose is particularly active in the process of the glycosylation process. It's more active than sucrose and glucose. So it's actually worse for you. It causes inflammation of the glia cells in the brain. So it's really a problem. So we're pretty strict about no fruit until we get things back in order. Okay? Animal fat. Cooked animal fat seems to be very significant in this process. This is number one without a doubt. There are actually cultures that have had, like the Eskimos, did not really have diabetes until they started cooking their animal fat and taking white sugar. The people in Yemen, until they added white sugar to their 85% animal fat, food diet, didn't really have a huge outbreak because they were so low in sugar. But fat does really play a role. And we're going to talk about fat in a different way because somehow people are out there worrying about nuts and seeds. So let's not use the Sheikh Nasruddin approach, okay? So let's break it into what we're talking about. First we have cooked versus raw. Raw fat, even if it's animal, does not seem to cause a problem. Cooked causes a problem. I mean, it's relative, okay? But cooked causes a problem because you get trans fatty acids. And these actually change the shape of the cell membrane so the cells don't work as well. Okay, so that's number one. Now we go into vegetable. Okay, and again, if it's cooked versus raw, it's a big deal. So if you have cooked nuts and seeds, that's really not so good for you because again, you're causing that. Now we go another step and we go into omega-3 versus omega-6. Omega-3 fatty acids are actually been shown to help prevent diabetes, to decrease insulin resistance. Omega-3. Omega-6, not as good. So the ratio has to be better, and the ratios are very poor towards omega-6 being predominant. And so these are some ideas to begin to think about. Saturated fat versus polyunsaturated fat, another category. Saturated fat isn't so good for you, whereas the polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats are pretty good. They're reasonable. So that takes us to nuts and seeds. So you don't get scared of nuts and seeds. It appears that walnuts and almonds, raw almonds, not cooked almonds like they want to give you in California, courtesy of the culture of death, actually help decrease insulin resistance. Walnuts, because they're very high in omega-3s and high in arginine and certain minerals, actually decrease inflammation. Decrease inflammation in the, particularly in the intima, which is the inner lining of the arteries. Really worth knowing about. So walnuts are really good. They seem to have a really good effect. Almonds have been shown to decrease insulin resistance by 23%. Walnuts have decreased sudden cardiac events, meaning not such a positive thing, heart attacks, by up to 70%. And they have been shown to actually repair the intima of the arteries. Now, olive oil, not olives necessarily, has been shown not to be quite so good. It causes up to a 34% constriction of the artery. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you take something that's nice and smooth, you go, you're going to cause some more than wrinkles. You're going to affect the lining. So, what they have found is that because it was not part of the Mediterranean diet, everybody thinks it's part of the lion's heart diet. It wasn't. Is that olive oil by itself with pasta and things like that really isn't so good for you, and actually injures the lining of your arteries. If you have it with salads and lots of antioxidants, or lots of polyphenols and things, then it's okay. So we don't really recommend a lot of olive oil unless you're having it on your salad. So kind of keep that one in mind. That's new information probably for most people here. And research was done by a head of a cardiology research team in the Department of Cardiology at the University of the United States. Okay, meat and dairy in general. People who eat meat have, what I'm going to do is, if you could just write the question down, and we'll have time for questions at the end. Meat has been associated with a 4 times higher rate of type 2 diabetes. Dairy is a whole other problem. Juvenile diabetes, which is really not genetic, it's 85% not genetic, seems to be associated with 3 major onslaughts. One is dairy, because it turns out that the antigens there's over 100 antigens in milk, create antibodies that attack the pancreas. And research shows, both in Finland and in Chile, that the diabetes is 11 to 13 times higher in children who get cow's milk before the age of 3 months. That's very significant. The American Academy of Pediatrics in 1994, looking at the literature with maybe 90 papers, as it now actually recommends that people, if there's any possibility of association in your family, immediate family, certainly not have any dairy until the age of 2. Milk dairy.